The hallowed halls of Forrester Creations have long been a battleground for ego, ambition, and generational warfare, but nothing could have prepared the fashion empire for the seismic shockwave currently tearing through its foundation. For years, Hope Logan Spencer has been the quintessential good soldier, the moral compass, and the tireless creative force behind the critically acclaimed Hope for the Future brand. She has poured her heart, her soul, and her very identity into a line that preaches optimism and empowerment. Yet, in a cruel twist of corporate fate, all of her relentless dedication has been unceremoniously discarded. Steffi Forrester Finnegan, operating with an unprecedented level of executive hubris, has once again shelved Hope's life's work. The justification, prioritizing Eric Forrester's couture, feels less like a strategic business maneuver and more like a calculated, condescending strike against the Logan legacy. Steffi's dismissive arrogance, encapsulated in her chillingly flippant attitude toward Hope's legitimate grievances, has finally pushed the blonde designer past the point of no return. To understand the sheer magnitude of Hope's breaking point, one must deeply examine the psychological toll of her enduring marginalization. For far too long, Hope has watched Steffi wield her co-CEO title not just as a badge of leadership, but as a weapon of suppression. Every single time Hope managed to elevate her brand, Steffi was there to pull the rug out from under her, citing budget reallocations or shifting corporate priorities. The cumulative weight of these indignities has fundamentally altered Hope's psychological landscape. The soft-spoken, forgiving, and endlessly accommodating daughter of Brooke Logan has been entirely consumed by a cold, fierce, and unyielding fury. The era of the compliant, peacekeeping Hope Logan has officially ended, replaced by a woman forged in the fires of professional humiliation and radicalized by the realization that playing fair in a Forrester-dominated world is a fool's errand. The atmosphere in the Forrester Creations building felt suffocatingly tense as Hope made her way toward the executive suite. Every step she took echoed with the ghosts of past Logan Forrester conflicts. This was the same building where her mother, Brooke, had fought tooth and nail for respect, where Stephanie Forrester had once ruled with an iron fist, and where the Logan women were perpetually reminded that their names were not on the building. Hope's mind raced with the recent provocations, Steffi's condescending challenges, Liam Spencer's strategic whispering about defecting to Katie Logan's newly successful fashion house, and the looming threat of a massive power shift. But simply leaving Forrester Creations quietly was no longer enough for Hope. Packing up her sketches and walking across town to the Logan brand would feel like a retreat, a surrender to Steffi's relentless bullying. Hope needed a revolution. She needed to strike at the very heart of Steffi's power, and she knew exactly who possessed the historical weight, the corporate influence, and the sheer force of will to execute that strike. When Hope finally burst through the heavy oak doors of the CEO office, Brooke Logan Forrester was entirely unprepared for the tempest that had just entered her sanctuary. Brooke, who has spent decades navigating the treacherous waters of Forrester family politics, immediately recognized the dangerous, unfamiliar shift in her daughter's demeanor. The air in the room grew instantly heavy, charged with an electric tension that made it difficult to breathe. Hope did not offer a warm greeting. She did not seek comfort, validation, or a maternal embrace. Instead, she stood tall, her posture rigid, her expression an impenetrable mask of absolute resolve. She looked at the desk, the very seat of power that Steffi occupied with such arrogant entitlement, and then she locked eyes with her mother. The silence that stretched between them was deafening, a profound, terrifying quiet that precedes a devastating storm. Brooke, sensing the gravity of the moment, braced herself, instinctively understanding that whatever words were about to leave Hope's lips would alter the trajectory of their lives forever. With a voice entirely devoid of its usual melodic warmth, Hope delivered an ultimatum so brutal, so fundamentally earth-shattering, that it left Brooke physically reeling. Hope laid bare the reality of her situation. Steffi had once again crushed her life's work, and Hope was utterly done begging for scraps at the Forrester table. But the true shock came when Hope turned her crosshairs directly onto Brooke herself. She bluntly declared that if Brooke did not stand up, if she did not launch a ruthless, hostile takeover to strip Steffi of her co-CEO title and claim it for herself. Hope would walk away from the Logan family forever. The words hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Hope was not merely asking for her mother's corporate support. She was demanding a bloody revolution to restore the honor of the Logan bloodline. And the penalty for Brooke's refusal was the permanent, irrevocable severance of their mother-daughter bond. Hope promised to cut all ties, to erase Brooke from her life entirely, and to vanish into the rival Logan brand, leaving her mother behind in the toxic, suffocating Forrester ecosystem. The sheer ferocity and coldness of Hope's delivery were what truly paralyzed Brooke. This was not a bluff. This was not a temporary tantrum born of professional frustration. The icy resolve in Hope's eyes conveyed a terrifying truth. She had already grieved the potential loss of her mother. Hope had reached a point of such profound disillusionment that she was willing to sacrifice the most sacred relationship in her life if it meant escaping the cycle of Forrester subjugation. She framed the choice with agonizing, inescapable clarity. Brooke could either continue to submit to Steffi's arrogance, playing the role of the compliant wife to Ridge Forrester and lose her only daughter, or she could rise up, embrace her power, and fight for the Logan legacy. Hope's ultimatum effectively weaponized Brooke's maternal love, transforming it into a tactical instrument of corporate warfare. It was a masterclass in emotional manipulation, born from a place of deep, untreated trauma and relentless marginalization. For Brooke, the room began to spin. The walls of the CEO office, adorned with the rich history of the fashion empire she had helped build, suddenly felt like the bars of a prison cell. She stared at Hope, searching desperately for a flicker of the compassionate, forgiving girl she had raised, but found only the hardened gaze of a warrior preparing for absolute destruction. Brooke was struck by a profound, suffocating panic. She had spent her entire adult life fighting for her place in this family, fighting for Ridge's love, and fighting to protect her children. Now, those two fundamental pillars of her existence were violently colliding in real time. Hope was demanding that Brooke become the very thing the Forresters had always accused her of being, a ruthless, power-hungry usurper. The psychological weight of this demand was crushing. Brooke knew that launching a hostile takeover against Steffi was not just a business maneuver. It was an act of war that would ignite a catastrophic conflagration within the Forrester family. The most agonizing component of Brooke's dilemma was, inevitably, Ridge Forrester. Ridge, the absolute love of her life, her proclaimed destiny, and the man she had fought so bitterly to hold onto through decades of turmoil. Brooke knew with absolute, terrifying certainty that moving against Steffi would shatter her marriage beyond repair. Ridge had always possessed a massive blind spot when it came to his daughter. Despite Carter Walton's desperate, prophetic warnings that Steffi was becoming an executive monster, Ridge remained paralyzed, unable or unwilling to rein in his daughter's worst impulses. If Brooke were to orchestrate a coup to dethrone Steffi, Ridge would view it as an unforgivable, ultimate betrayal. The historical pattern was etched into Brooke's very soul. Whenever the conflict between Hope and Steffi reached a boiling point, Ridge invariably retreated to the safe, uncomplicated harbor of Taylor Hayes. The mere thought of pushing Ridge back into Taylor's arms sent a jolt of pure terror through Brooke's heart. She was being asked to sacrifice her soulmate on the altar of her daughter's ambition. As Brooke stood frozen under Hope's relentless gaze, the ghosts of the past seemed to materialize in the room. She remembered the decades of being looked down upon by Stephanie Forrester, the endless accusations that the Logans were nothing but opportunistic interlopers from the valley. She had spent years trying to prove her worth, trying to show that she belonged at the pinnacle of Forrester creations not just as Ridge's muse, but as a formidable businesswoman in her own right. Hope was now holding up a harsh, unforgiving mirror to that painful history, demanding that Brooke stop seeking validation from the Forresters and instead take the power that was rightfully hers. Hope's argument was intoxicatingly persuasive. Why should the Logans continue to bow to Steffi's whims when they were the lifeblood of the company's success? Why should Brooke settle for a secondary role when she had the influence, the shares, and the acumen to lead? The ultimatum was forcing Brooke to confront her own deeply buried resentments and the painful compromises she had made in the name of peace. The timing of this explosive confrontation could not have been more precarious for the Logan family. Outside the walls of Forrester Creations, Katie Logan Spencer was basking in the monumental, global success of her newly launched fashion brand alongside Bill Spencer. The Logan name was currently dominating billboards worldwide, proving that they did not need the Forrester machine to achieve greatness. Katie's success had already fractured her relationship with Brooke, especially after Katie flatly rejected Brooke's conditional olive branch earlier in the week. Donna Logan was watching in absolute horror as her sisters drifted apart, terrified that the family was splintering beyond repair. If Brooke were to launch a hostile takeover, it would not only ignite a war with the Forrestas but also complicate the delicate dynamics within her own family. Liam Spencer's strategic maneuvering to poach Hope for Katie's brand was a looming threat, a safety net that gave Hope the leverage to make such a dangerous demand of her mother. The entire Los Angeles fashion landscape was a powder keg, and Hope was holding the match. The profound tragedy of Brooke's situation is that there is no victory without devastating loss. If she chooses Ridge, if she chooses to maintain the fragile peace in her marriage and allows Steffi to continue her reign of corporate terror, she will lose Hope. Hope's promise to sever their relationship was not an empty threat. It was a solemn, chilling vow. Brooke would have to watch her daughter walk out of the building, out of her life, and into the arms of a rival company, carrying with her a permanent, unhealable resentment. The mother-daughter bond, which had survived countless scandals, tragedies, and heartbreaks, would be irrevocably shattered. Brooke would be left in the Forrester mansion, surrounded by luxury but hollowed out by the loss of her child. The thought of Hope looking at her not with love, but with the cold indifference of a stranger, was a psychological torment that Brooke could barely fathom. Conversely, if Brooke chooses Hope, the path forward is paved with absolute destruction. A hostile takeover of Forrester Creations is not a simple boardroom vote. It is a brutal, bloodletting campaign. Brooke would have to leverage every ounce of her influence, manipulate board members, and publicly humiliate Steffi. She would have to align herself with Carter Walton, who had already warned of the catastrophic consequences of such hubris, and perhaps even strike a dark alliance with Bill Spencer or Liam. The collateral damage would be immense. Ridge would be caught in the crossfire, forced to watch his wife destroy his daughter's legacy. The betrayal would be too deep for their marriage to survive. Taylor Hayes, quietly waiting in the wings, would undoubtedly become Ridge's solace. Brooke would gain the co-CEO seat. She would secure Hope's future, and she would restore the Logan pride, but she would do so at the cost of the man she loves. She would sit on the throne of Forrester Creations, entirely alone. Hope, watching the myriad of emotions crash over her mother's face, did not waver for a single second. The radicalization of Hope Logan Spencer is perhaps the most compelling and terrifying character evolution in recent memory. She is no longer constrained by the desire to be liked, to be fair, or to be the bigger person. Steffi's relentless bullying has stripped away Hope's idealism, leaving behind a pragmatic, ruthless survivor. Hope understands that power respects only power. She is using the ultimate leverage, her own presence in Brooke's life, to force her mother to evolve. Hope's coldness in this moment is a brilliant defense mechanism, a shield against the pain of potentially being rejected by her mother in favor of a Forrester. She is daring Brooke to prove that the Logan blood is thicker than Forrester loyalty. The silence in the CEO office stretched to its absolute limit, a heavy, suffocating blanket that wrapped around the two women. The ambient sounds of the bustling design floors outside seemed to exist in another universe. In this room, there was only the raw, bleeding reality of an impossible choice. Brooke's mind raced through every possible compromise, every potential negotiation, but Hope's eyes offered no quarter. There would be no middle ground. There would be no peaceful resolution. The era of appeasement was dead. Brooke realized that she was standing at the precipice of the most defining moment of her life. The legacy of the Logan women, their pride, their future, and their very unity were all resting squarely on her shoulders. "Look at me, Mom." Hope's voice finally broke the silence, slicing through the tension like a scalpel. "Look at what they have reduced us to. I am asking you to remember who you are. You are Brooke Logan. You built this company just as much as any Forrester. I need you to fight for me, but more importantly, I need you to fight for us. If you let Steffi do this, if you let her erase me, then you are erasing yourself. And I will not, be a part of a family that bows to her." The words were a masterstroke of emotional pressure. Hope was not just demanding a corporate seat. She was demanding a reclamation of their dignity. She was challenging Brooke to shed the subservient role she had adopted to keep Ridge happy and to embrace the fierce, unstoppable force she had once been. As the scene hangs in this agonizing suspension, the audience is left breathless, witnessing the complete deconstruction of a family. Brooke Logan Forrester, the matriarch, the lover, the fighter, is trapped in a psychological vice. The tears welling in her eyes are not just tears of sorrow, but tears of a terrifying realization. She knows what she must do. The love of a mother is a primal, undeniable force, and when forced to choose between a husband and a child, the blood tie almost always prevails. But the cost of this choice will be astronomical. The Los Angeles fashion world is about to be engulfed in a war unlike any it has seen before. The battle for Forrester Creations is no longer just about fabric and profit margins. It is a battle for the very soul of a family. Hope Logan has drawn the sword, and now, the world waits with bated breath to see if